Hi, I'm Alex Guarnaschelli. You've seen me before, probably Chopped, Iron Chef, but now I get to actually kind of teach a little class about one of my favorite topics on the planet, eggs. We just never get sick of them. Scrambled, fried, poached. I'm always looking for some cool little new technique to kind of reinvent what we do so many hundreds of times in a year, cook eggs. I scramble a lot of eggs, and I kind of thought a lot about how do you really scramble a great egg? Because you got a lot of choices, right? You can mix in cream, you can mix milk, you can mix water. There's a whole argument about what to add to your eggs, when to add salt, what eggs to buy. It's a confusing landscape. Now here's the deal with eggs as far as buying them, because you got a million choices. Of course, if your budget allows, buy organic. It's great, if you can. You can't, go for the free range, go for the cage free, it's fine too. There's no egg police that's gonna come and arrest you. It's just something that you wanna really buy the best of, because they're delicious. As far as egg colors go, that's really confusing. You've got these beautiful blue ones and brown ones and white ones, how to pick. Those really have to do with the type of bird laying the eggs, not much more. I'm partial to the brown. I don't know why. I feel like they look healthy, which is totally silly. That's just the psychological layer on top. But brown, white, beige, taupe, as long as they're organic or free range, that's good enough. To scramble, I just crack the egg on the counter to make a little dent in the shell, and then I break it apart. Tap, you get that break, and split. You want to try to touch the egg as little as possible. I'm scrambling eggs for, say, 2 people, which is 10 eggs. I'm just kidding. It's like 4 eggs. I'm gonna get those emails like, what, 10 eggs? By the way, there is a Q&A button that you can hit if you wanna ask me questions or talk eggs at all, right underneath here. Just check it out. So 4 eggs, nothing else in the bowl, and I just whisk to break them up. You can overwork eggs. Like people, you can also overwork food, so don't do it, right? It's nice to get a little bicep curl work done in the morning, you know, strengthen those core muscles, but just whisk the eggs enough to break them up. Now, when to add salt? I went over to Bobby Flay's house last summer, and he said, let me scramble you some eggs, because he's like that, and he didn't add salt till the end. And I freaked out, because my whole life, it's egg, salt, bowl, scramble. I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick with what I've always done. Forgive me, Bobby. I do kind of like the taste of the unseasoned egg with the patches of salt sprinkled. That's kind of a cool bite that you can have. But I'm gonna just season them with a pinch of salt now and a little bit of cracked black pepper. Don't add too much. We can add more later. Now, you got a couple of choices. You're at a scrambled egg crossroads. Cream or water? Well, it depends on the result you're looking for. For cream, when I add a splash of cream, I'm committing to a super creamy, luscious egg. A little bit heavier. Fluffy, light, for an omelet or a scrambled egg, go with water. Water makes them lighter and fluffier because you're adding less fat to the equation. So those eggs are nice and fluffy. Touch of butter right in a not too hot medium pan. You see I'm just melting that butter? No, I don't know about you, but I could just get right in here with a piece of bread and skip the whole egg situation. I've got a non-stick pan. You can use a cast iron skillet. You can use a regular stainless pan. I'm a non-stick gal. Eggs going right in there. And it smells so good. When you've done it right, you can smell that little bit of butter on the bottom, just kind of melding together with those eggs. Now, because I care about the surface of my non-stick, I'm gonna use a rubber heat-proof spatula just to move those eggs around in the pan. Now, if you like your eggs to kind of have those big, kind of hearty, homey pieces, stir them a little bit less. If you like them a little bit more, stir them more vigorously. You see how quick this is happening? You wanna be ready. Most important thing you can do, have a plate ready, because those eggs, like everything else, will keep on cooking. Break them up. Make sure you get in there. Take a little nose bath. Give it a little last season and hurry to get those out of the pan because they will keep cooking. So they're a nice, fluffy, comforting, belly-warming scrambled egg with nothing but a little water and our smarts, because we know we did this right. Oh yeah. You almost have room for the eggiest of egg moments if you just use water. Nice and fluffy. I know a lot of chefs, they whisk in a stick of butter for one egg and they make all this fancy stuff. That's cute and all, but I like a just cooked through, but still kind of luscious and juicy egg, nice and fluffy. Now I have a question from the audience.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Audrey is asking, how do you know if your egg isn't fresh?
Audrey, how do we know if an egg isn't fresh? When you crack your eggs in a bowl, you can see right away if the egg white kind of runs all over the bowl and is really loose, that's a sign that your egg is not as fresh. Similarly, when you hard boil and peel the eggs, the skin should be hard to take off. That's another sign of freshness. The egg kind of resists being cooked. That's a sign of freshness. As far as sell-by dates go and whatever else, those are important indicators. If you have a carton of eggs, check the sell-by date. Eggs are not something I play around with. If I don't feel right or I know they've been hanging out a little bit at the ranch, I don't take the chance. Because one egg, let me tell you, that'll knock you out. Great question. Okay, so let's talk about another one of my favorite topics, fried eggs, how to do them. There's a couple of different ways I like to fry eggs, mostly because I love a traditional fried egg, but I also like maybe an egg that has a little bit more protein and a little less cholesterol. If you have a habit of cracking eggs right into the pan and the yolk breaks and then you're just kind of looking around like, what am I doing here? Because we want that beautiful yolk. Crack your eggs for frying into individual little bowls, cups, or whatever. And that way you can check out the egg beforehand to see if it looks good, right? Look at that. I just cracked some eggs and I'm hungry. All right, so we're gonna do 2 fried eggs. I have another audience question. I love it.
Yeah, a lot of people keep asking the same question, but fans want to know, what is your favorite egg dish of all time?
Fans want to know, what is my favorite egg dish of all time? Do you know that eggs are probably one of the huge reasons I became a chef in the first place? My mother made a cheese souffle that had a whole wheel of brie peeled and passed through a strainer and whisked into about 1,000 eggs. And about 2,000 egg whites. She baked it in the oven with sherry and Parmigiano Reggiano cheese and herbs and rushed it to the table. I must have been 8 or 9. She dug into the dish and the eggs just kind of went, hey girl, I heard them. I was only like 8 or 9, but I heard them. I ate this plate of eggs with a hunger I just can't even tell you. And I thought, you know what? Cooking and giving food is just so rewarding. It's really what I think I want to do. But I was only 9, so I totally forgot all about feeling that feeling and only came back to it like 12 years later. Great question, though. Thanks for asking. As far as frying in what fat? Do we want to use butter? Do we want to use olive oil for frying? You know, that's about taste and personal preference. So I am going to, you notice I get my pan for a fried egg just a little bit hotter. Now, I'm very glad this is happening, as Julia Child would say. My pan's too hot. What do? Stop. Wipe that grease that's too hot right out of that pan and just take a second to cool it off and start again. If you let your cooking get away from you like a runaway train, you're not going to get the result you want. Now, this is a medium-sized pan. That's a lot of real estate, right? You're thinking, we're going to fry 5, 6, 7 eggs. To be honest, I drop my eggs, and you see how right from the bowl, they go right in there? And you can actually keep them from feeling like one giant fried egg. Now, you see how a little bit of that brown butter creates that lacy edge that we love so much? Pinch of salt right in there. I've got this on super low heat. The thing I love about cooking eggs is you can see the whole process. It's stovetop. We're not going in the oven. We can just watch this happen. Let's try a variation at the same time, and I'll probably burn everything, and then you'll say, that Alex, she's such a funny gal. A little bit of olive oil, just for variation, right? Get that a little bit hot. I've got one whole egg, and to it, I'm gonna add a couple of whites. I'm gonna separate out those yolks. I save them for other stuff like custard sauces. I have a frozen container of egg yolks in my freezer at all times, just in case you make that 12 yolk ice cream or whatever else. I've got 3 whites in here and 1 whole egg. I've got some hot olive oil. I'm gonna drop those, you don't always do. Before I drop the eggs, I do a little swirl. I just swirl that pan around just to make sure that fat is all over. Drop the egg. You see how it instantly starts to firm up. And then I just drop in my 3 other whites. This is my high protein egg. On days when I know I'm gonna eat a wheel of brie and a cake, I start out a little high protein. I have another audience question. I love it.
Yeah. So Lillian is wondering, if she wanted to add protein, such as ham and turkey, should she add it while whisking or once the eggs are in the pan?
For scrambled eggs?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So for scrambled eggs, when do we add the protein? You know what I do? I like to start the eggs, I spill them into the pan, scramble them, and just 2/3 of the way cooked, sprinkle it in, take it off, mix, finished. You don't want to cook it the whole way. Don't take your ham and cheese for a big ride around the block with the eggs. You don't need to. Just enough to warm it up. Can you see this giant egg white in here? Check this out. I love that. Now, the yolk and the white don't cook fully at the same temperature, right? The white is playing catch up sometimes with the yolk. Sometimes if I want to get a little bit more of a cook without flipping them over, because I'm a sunny side up gal no matter what, but I like my eggs cooked through. I don't want to flip them in the pan. When the yolk breaks, you know when you flip them and the yolk breaks and you get this kind of, tastes like a piece of old rug in a Chevy Oldsmobile from 1970? That yolk, when you turn it over and you overcook it, the egg is ruined and you're like, oh well, I'll eat it anyway. We don't want I'll eat it anyway. We want I made this, I'm in charge of my kitchen, and we feel fantastic. That's what we're going for. So these eggs, these 2 eggs I've been frying and just kind of letting them hang out. This giant egg white / yolk, I'm covering it. And what's happening is it's creating steam, and that's steaming the yolk without me flipping the egg. You want to accelerate the steam a little bit? Add a touch of water. I always keep a squeezed bottle of water, by the way, next to my stove. So if anything starts burning, I just squirt a little water. It buys you some time. Water is the most underrated ingredient you can have in your kitchen, and it's free. I have another audience question.
So Leanna is wondering if leftover bacon fat is good for frying eggs.
Leanna, you're clearly a woman after my own heart. If you have bacon grease in your kitchen, first of all, you're my kind of cook. But second of all, that's a great thing to do with eggs. If you want that taste in your eggs. Sometimes when I make bacon and eggs together, I want the egg to be egg and the bacon to be bacon. So actually save that bacon grease to put in a biscuit dough or put in a popover dough or fry some vegetables for dinner and leave it just kind of as is, but you can totally use bacon grease. My mom used to keep kind of a jar of bacon grease hanging out by the stove. You see how steaming this egg has created more of a cooked yolk, and it's just gently bringing that yolk in for a landing without being overcooked. I just love that. Okay, I've got my 2 classic fried eggs, and you'll notice that because I used enough real estate to cook them, I got 2 individually fried eggs instead of a mass of egg whites. Look at that, so pretty. You want that jiggle factor, let's face it. People are always asking me, How do I know if something's cooked? How do I know if it's right? The best thing you can do is look at your food. It's always got an indicator. And in this case, those yolks are just still quivering. They're almost molten. And here they are. Now, for fried eggs, I like a little texture. So that's a place where I might drop a little coarse sea salt instead of the classic kosher. So as you're taking those bites, you're getting the crackle and the texture from the coarse salt. So that's just 2 classic fried eggs that look so good. I'm gonna wipe out that pan because I might use it again. I'm a big fan, by the way, of wiping out a pan and using it again. I do not want to spend my day doing dishes. My idea of a 30-minute meal is 29.5 minutes of cooking and 0.5 minutes of dishes. I have another audience question. I love it. I love it. If you have a question, you got a Q&A button below. Ask away.
All right. Rachel's asking if you're a sweet or savory breakfast kind of person.
Rachel, am I a sweet or savory breakfast person? I so appreciate, Rachel, that you think I'm organized about my thinking. Truth is, for breakfast, which is my favorite meal of the day, and more importantly, brunch, which is just about break the calorie bank and worry about it later on in the day, I like both. I gotta have a little of both. The eggs, the bacon, or the sausage, that's kind of the savory part for me. And then I always have to have some baked goods on the table with it. I just have to. Or I start out saying, I'm just gonna have 2 slices of bacon and an egg, and I end up slathering 6 slices of toast with about half a jar of jam. So Rachel, I'm a Gemini, and I'm half and half. Okay. What about that question that we got earlier that was super smart about when do you add protein or garnishes to scrambled eggs? At what point in the cooking process? So one of my favorite things to add to eggs is mushrooms because they're meaty. I have a lot of friends who are vegetarian. It's such a great way to bring everybody into it. You know, the classic bacon and sausage has to also have something on the table for my vegetarian friends. I've got some cremini mushrooms. I love a supermarket mushroom. You don't need to get fancy to make it delicious. Now you're gonna cut the mushrooms into quarters and just put a little bit of salt in there. Whenever you put something in a pan, put a pinch of salt. It's like paying taxes, right? You gotta do it. In this case, putting a pinch of salt in anything draws out the water. When you draw water out of your food, guess what you're left with? Food that has less water in it and has more taste. And that's what this is all about. That's what we're trying to do here. Make simple stuff you make all the time and just make it that much more delicious, okay? So I'm cooking these cremini mushrooms, a little bit of olive oil. I might want to put a few chives in my eggs. They make me feel fancy, chives, you know? I've got another audience question. I love it. What's your question?
So Ortega is wondering what your favorite omelet combination would be.
Ortega, what a great question. You know, as long as it involves some mushrooms and cheese, I'm all about it. I love extra sharp cheddar cheese. It's kind of a favorite of mine. Also, it's American. I just love a great, sharp Wisconsin cheddar grated right into my eggs with some sauteed mushrooms like this. Sold. My feeling is I love a loaded omelet, but if you really want to make a great tasting omelet, just put 2 or 3 ingredients, right? And then you'll get those really pure, clean flavors. So I have my mushrooms cooking, just cutting a few chives, right? Nice and thin, as thin as you can manage. Scallions are great here too. Just some scallion greens, especially if it's not date night and you're not worried about that onion breath. It's perfect. Okay, got some chives. Now you notice all the steam escaping from the mushrooms? That's the water coming out, and you're left with a mushroom that's got a ton more flavor. Let's get a few eggs ready, just like we did before, but this time, let's make a creamier scrambled egg. I've got, let's say, for 2 people, 4 eggs. And we're just gonna kind of repeat what we did before so you can see the simple technique again. I could literally cook eggs all day with you. So if you don't have anywhere to be, let's just make tons and tons of eggs. Whisk those eggs just like we did before. Now at this point I added salt and water. Just to do something a little different, let's add a little pinch of cream. Okay, maybe it was more than a chef's pinch of cream. I have another question.
So Carrie is wondering, what's one kitchen item you can't live without?
Carrie, I am not a big equipment person in the kitchen. I like what I like and that's it. But one thing I really can't live without is a really good blender, because you can break stuff up, you can puree it, you can get those really smooth textures in a hurry. You can use it for everything. Smoothies, soup, whatever. Just something you can use a lot in the kitchen. I love that. The other thing I love is a grater like this. You can grate ginger, garlic, whatever else. You leave behind those tough fibers. You save yourself a lot of chopping. And you get these great textures. So those are two things I really can't live without. Okay, I have my mushrooms. I like the way they look. I mean, looks are one thing, right? But you kind of got to taste it too. Really good. I like to taste my fillings before I add them into the eggs. If you individually flavor everything and then mix it together, boy, are you going to get a great dish. Now, these can kind of keep cooking, but I did say we would do it the right way. So let me take these out. My pan's still nice and hot. Put a little bit of butter in there. Now you could do this for an omelet too. I'm gonna just do a quick mushroom scramble. You could do this for an omelet too. Eggs and cream that we mixed together. I will admit I do love cream. Kind of makes me feel like Ina, you know, like Jeffrey's coming home. I have a chicken in the oven. I'm scrambling eggs with cream. Store-bought is fine. Mix those eggs just like we did the last time. See that? This is so zen to me to do this. And you don't want a super hot pan because you really don't want super browned eggs. You just want that tender scramble. Sometimes if the pan's really hot, I shut the heat off and I just kind of control it. Because if you scramble them more slowly, you see how we're just getting that smaller bit of egg, but it's also coming together nice and easy. I love that. Let's just think about eggs for a minute. By the way, an omelet is good for me at any time of day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, post-dinner, pre-snack. I have another audience question.
Yeah. So a handful of fans are wondering, do you have a favorite brunch dish with eggs?
By the way, just drop the mushrooms and those chives in there. Do I have a favorite brunch dish with eggs? Well, if I'm having a lot of people over, to be honest, I like something I can manage really easily. It's a good idea. You don't want to put so much pressure on yourself, right? You don't want to watch people staring at you poach 40 eggs, right? So I like something like a frittata or a really big omelet or a souffle. Those are my favorite things. Notice how the cream, come on, I mean, if you're not hungry, I can't help you. I've got those chives in there. I didn't put any cheese in here. You could if you want to. Doesn't that just look gorgeous? So there's that. And then we also have that giant fried egg. Look at this. Come on. It's almost like a pizza. Look at that. And you see how because we covered it and just steamed it, you got that light sheen over the yolk, right? Almost like over easy without the over, just the easy. And look at this. Cut into it, and you've got an overcooked yolk that I shouldn't be showing you. Sorry, it happens. It looks good, but a little overcooked on that one. I have an audience question.
Yeah, so it looks like we have a special question coming in.
Special question.
Yeah.
I love special questions. Go ahead.
Jeffrey Zakarian is asking,
Jeffrey.
do you like seasoned steel pans like they use in France or non-stick for omelets?
Jeffrey, you can't be coming on here and asking questions. You had your little Kale Caesar moment earlier today. Of course, I love a French seasoned pan, but I don't want to make everybody at home feel bad, Jeffrey. Of course, if you have a seasoned steel pan like they have in France and like they have at the Zakarian household, then by all means use that. But if not, you can use a non-stick for an omelet. It's easier, Jeffrey. I love you. My God. I feel like my mom's gonna ask the next question, like, really, who chose that outfit for you today, honey? Can we talk? My mother will call me and say, can you come over because you weren't that nice on Shop tonight? I kind of want to talk to you about your Food Network presence. I'm like, Mom, the ship sailed. It's too late. I love you, Jeffrey. Okay, last technique we're going to do is poaching. I feel like people freak out about this. It feels complicated to poach an egg, but I assure you it's something that you can do. And actually, we can do together. And then people come over and you can poach eggs and say, I don't know how I got so good at this. I just kind of must be a natural. I'm going to be a chef. The truth is, the Food Network got you there. And so let's do this together right now. I've got some water simmering. I like a shallow pan for poaching. A lot of people get a big pot of water on. When you drop that egg into the poaching water, it has to travel all the way down. And it leaves the trail of the egg white as it falls. I want to watch it. I want to be able to get it out of the water nice and easy, right? I'm actually going to move this closer so we can have a better look. Now here's what I love about poaching eggs more than anything. There's no added fat involved. If you're talking just pure calorie counting and lightness, like if you have a really heavy brunch, you've got bacon and sausage and you made the usual for like 2 guests, like a cornbread, 6 tons of scones and some muffins. I mean, when I have 2 people over, I buy 20 bagels. So a poached egg is a really great way to lighten it up and provide something luscious with that great kind of breaky, egg yolky moment. Simmer some water, add a little vinegar. Why add vinegar, you ask? You know, chemically or scientifically speaking, it helps that white firm up more quickly when the white hits the water. And that creates that delicious, luscious, tight poached egg that we love. In my opinion, it also adds a little bit of taste. And I like that acidity on the egg. I've got red wine vinegar here. Classically, you could use white vinegar. Add about a tablespoon of red wine vinegar. You can smell it. So check your water out, simmer it, add that little bit of vinegar, and add a pinch of salt. We're seasoning as we go, of course. Don't put the water, vinegar, and salt in a cold pot and bring it up because you don't want to reduce the vinegar and the salt. Simmer the water and then add that vinegar and salt. I have an audience question. We're right about to poach eggs, but we've got that question, that burning question.
It's a burning question. Fans want to know what your ideal breakfast sandwich is.
Ooh, I got to do that next time. That would take like 2 hours. Would you guys mind taking the day off, just canceling everything, getting on this app with me, and making my ideal breakfast sandwich? Because it is a homemade cream biscuit, which is super easy to make, no butter. And there's a lot of people in the South right now that are probably mad at me. Just a classic cream biscuit, baked piping hot, right out of the oven. I mean, you know how they say let baked goods sit and rest before you eat them? Forget it. Pull these out of the oven, tear it open steaming hot, drop a fried egg and about 3 or 4 slices of super crispy, kind of cut up bacon. I don't like when I bite into my breakfast sandwich and the whole piece of bacon comes out. Cut it up a little bit. Salt, maybe a pinch of chives, and a little bit of American cheese. Yes, I said it, American cheese. That is sublime to me. When the yolk breaks and you get that creamy biscuit and that egg and that bacon, just stop. Anybody can be talking to me and I just check out. Okay, poaching eggs. I break the eggs into individual containers again. And if you, just anything like this that you have, old teacups, doesn't matter, break your eggs one by one into individual containers. Hey, yeah. Let's do like, how many should we do? 3? One thing about cooking eggs, you need some real estate. If you drop like 10 poached eggs into here, it becomes a hot mess. Don't do it. Leave yourself enough room, right? You want a house with a nice big yard for the kids and the dogs to run around in. Eggs want a house with a nice big yard to cook around in too. So we're gonna have, let's say, 4 eggs, and these are large eggs. They're not jumbo or extra large. That can make a difference too. I mean, if you like your jumbo eggs, that's fine. Kind of like a large for most of these. And again, it's all about budget, right? Buy the best egg you can afford for your budget. I'm gonna add a little bit more water here. The water can boil down. We wanna make sure our yolks, our eggs are almost completely submerged. And I know it sounds nutty, right? We talk a lot about cooking pasta and salting the water and getting that seawater taste. You wanna do that here with your egg poaching water. Mix it, give it a tiny taste. You should get a little bit of that vinegar note and a little bit of salt. If you don't, just add a little bit more in. Kosher salt, just because it dissolves easily. Kosher salt is the salt that will forgive you, you know? It's like your mom, you know? No matter what, she's gotta love you. That's what kosher salt is. All right, mix that in. I don't want a roaring boil here. We don't wanna deal with overly hot water. You don't need it. You just need like a jacuzzi, if you will, for these eggs. I've got 4 here. You could do 2 if you feel more comfortable. You could put a pan on the size of this whole stove and just poach 1 to get your sea legs and get comfortable with the idea. Notice how I tilt the bowl in there so the egg doesn't really have far to drop at all. Kind of stays intact because it almost hits the bottom. Now, I don't mind when there's a little bit of that kind of stringy's not a good word, but lacy, if you will, edges of the white. I'm dropping them in a little bit of a distance from each, right? So I'll have a little room, right? The other thing about putting your eggs and cracking them individually into little bowls is you can check the quality of each egg individually. So if you have a clunker, one that doesn't look so good, super runny white that doesn't look fresh, get rid of it. I have an audience question.
Yep. Abby is wondering what's the best way to make poached eggs for a crowd?
Abby, in front of all these people, you're asking me such a great question. You know, in a lot of restaurants, when we have a huge brunch service and the dining room fills up all at once, we definitely pre-poach those eggs, Abby. Don't judge me. Don't at me here, Abby. But we do that. You can do that too. Poach them almost all the way through where you want them. Lay them out on a towel on a big pan. And just keep them like that. And then you can just put them all on a platter and act like you're a Food Network app scholar superstar who knows how to make 40 eggs at once. Then you can just like poach 2 in front of everybody and say, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I just poached 100 eggs. But definitely pre-cooking them and putting them all on a pan, that's the best way. Keep them warm by the stove. Perfect. Notice how we drop those in there and they're almost cooked already. See, we're almost there. So fun to poach eggs, literally. To me, it's like easing into a jacuzzi at a spa. That's what we're doing. And I think it's kind of magical that we can just cook eggs like this in water with a little bit of vinegar. I got a little bubble on there, a little bit of a boil. When you see that, shut your water off and let things cool down, right? We're bringing our eggs gently into shore right now. We just want them to be perfect. Now, eggs are cooked in water when they're poached. I don't want water on my final dish. Don't you hate when you get eggs Benedict in a restaurant and the egg and the English muffin underneath is super soggy? It's like a waterlogged old raft. We don't want that. We want to drain that water away. So have a kitchen towel out at the ready so we can drain excess liquid off the eggs. Check it out. Let's pull one out, shall we? Yes, I have a question.
Yeah. So some fans are saying they've heard of a whirlpool technique when dropping eggs in the water.
Yes.
Do you recommend this?
You can swirl the water and drop it into the eye of the storm as you're swirling it. Totally, you can do that. That's a super fancy technique. I don't know if we're gonna need that. You can do it if you like, though. You can be super chefy and impress your friends. Or you could skip that and just get an egg like this and just tell your friends you swirled it. You just want to be cooler than everybody else. That's what we're doing here. We're making you into a mini chef. Look at this egg. You got that little jiggle. Again, I go for that coarse sea salt right on the egg. Notice I'm seasoning the egg on the towel where I'm draining that excess water. Look how much water we were gonna get, but we didn't because we thought about it. We said we're gonna crush the water factor and just get this perfectly poached egg. I mean, look at this. And then right on there. Now, it can be hard to get off the spoon. Don't rush it, don't freak out. Just use another spoon and slide it right off. Let's do that again. Now, if you swirl it when the egg is fully cooked, you can get rid of a lot of that excess white around the edges. I mean, look at this. Again, slotted spoon so the water's dripping through. Right on here, little coarse salt. Smells so good. Why season on the towel instead of on the plate, you ask? That's a great question. I don't really want a ton of salt on my plate. I only want salt on the food. So all that excess salt gets left behind with that water. Get it? You see these that have been left in an extra minute or two, they're cooked a little bit more. If you like your eggs a little more cooked, even when they're poached, leave them in a minute. By the way, do not do this on Chopped, okay? We're doing this in the safety of our own home. You and me. If you go on a competition show, do not poach eggs. Do not make fresh pasta in the 20-minute round, people. You know what I'm saying? Roll out that pre-made pizza dough and keep on going. Last one, look at this, so pretty. Look at all the water that we left behind, right? I have an audience question.
Yeah, Sue Ann is wondering if her eggs should have been room temperature while we were scrambling, frying, poaching, etc.
Suzanne, that's a great question. Now, I know how we feel about eggs out there, right? They can be dicey, or we want to make sure we take extra precautions with food safety. I do not have room temperature eggs when I do this stuff. When I'm baking and I have room temperature butter and milk and cream for a cake, for example, then I have my eggs at room temperature to match all the other ingredients. For scrambling, frying, poaching, right out of the fridge is totally fine. If you want, take them out like 10 minutes before you're gonna cook, just to give them a little warm up, but no need to go room temp on this. So here I have 4 quivering, beautiful poached eggs. And even though we took all those precautions, you see how there's still a little bit of excess water? The last thing you can do is just literally put a towel on, and this is what we do in restaurants, and soak up a little bit of that excess liquid before you put the plate on the table. Okay? Do they pass the breakage test? Because let's face it, if you get a poached egg with that overcooked yolk in the middle, I mean, it's like trying to eat a golf ball, right? Look at that. I mean, come on. I've got the texture, that perfect cooking of the yolk and the white just glistening, not too much string factor on the whites, just enough. Ooh. And we left behind all that excess seasoning. All this would have been on our plate, right? So when you poach eggs, water, vinegar, salt, you want a landing pad to catch all the extra water off the eggs, and season them with salt, and then you pop them on the plate. Look at that. Okay, so I've got that off. Fried, scrambled, poached. I think we really covered eggs. Thank you for cooking with me.